and thank you to the library for letting me speak and your amazing facilities here. Of course, first, need to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and thank them so much for having us on their land. So I'll start off with who I am. My name is Karlie. So I'm a Kamilaroi person. I grew up in Tamworth. Does anybody not know where Tamworth is? It's usually, wow, you all know, you don't know? You're like, about 6 hours away from Sydney. Armidale, do you know where Armidale is? No. Okay, 6 hours northwest of Sydney. Country town, pretty cool place. I liked it. I loved growing up there. I lived there for 18 years and then moved to Newcastle, Awabakal land, where I lived there for 8 years and did 2 undergraduate degrees simultaneously. 1 degree in science, majoring in physics, and another degree in maths, majoring in pure maths. So that took a while, hence why I was in Newcastle for 8 years. And I've just recently moved to Canberra, which I'm absolutely loving. It's a beautiful place. I feel very lucky to be able to live there and kind of do what I want to do and have the same opportunities that I would have in Sydney or Melbourne, but do it out in the bush. So yeah, I'm doing my master's there in astronomy and astrophysics. And I just started 5 weeks ago. So today, it's kind of a bit of a mix, what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about, I guess, my journey as, I guess, an Indigenous person, but also someone from a low SES background, so quite poor background. Also what it's like for a woman to go through something like STEM, and then kind of what I'm doing now and my experience with going through STEM. And I guess a bit of my hopes and stuff. So growing up, I didn't grow up around a lot of culture. I always knew I was Aboriginal because it was my name. My name is Aboriginal, my middle name is Alinta. It originates from South Australia and it means fire or flame. My grandma gave it to me and I love it. It's if I could be bothered, I would change my whole name just to my middle name. I'm incredibly proud to be Kamilaroi, and that's just how I was brought up. But at the same time, I wasn't taught culture. I wasn't taught that my culture was different to other people's culture. But it was subconsciously, I guess, kind of pushed into me. I grew up with a lot of people that were quite similar to me, so the people that I hung around with all lived in the same area that I lived in. We always did the same thing together, we'd go ride on our bikes when we got home from school, and went up the road, went to see our auntie because she just lived around the corner, went to see our cousin because they just lived around the corner, and it was a very close community. And so this was a section within Tamworth. From the outside, it was perceived very differently. This is where I'll cue Sophia. Could you click it? Thank you. Yep, it's just a little bit slow. You just press it once and that's good. So this is a Google search I did of the suburb I grew up in. It's called Coaldale. And this were the first images that come up. So from the outside, there was an incredibly different perception of the place I grew up in. It was kind of this weird, instead of just being kids that are riding on their bikes, hanging out with other kids, we were just these poor Aboriginal kids that had no home and were just getting up to mischief and horrible stuff. So it was very conflicting, I guess. No one wanted to come to our neighbourhood, like the pizza people wouldn't come to our neighbourhood, because, yeah, whatever. No one wanted to go to the schools there because you'd get bashed and all this stuff. And so it had this name. So the name was Vegemite Village. And I hear that this is quite unique, like people haven't heard of that before and it's not really used in other places, but in Tamworth it's like everybody knows what Vegemite Village is. And it's cold out. So I'm kind of fast forward on a bit. I'm in my second year electromagnetism class and studying electromagnetism, and my lecturer, he's a dude like 50s, mid-50s probably, like this old white dude basically, and he drops that he comes from Tamworth. I'm like, holy crap, I come from Tamworth, that's so cool. Like, this is amazing that there is this person who is, you know, an amazing lecturer, really well respected, really knowledgeable, someone that I really respected, come from the same place that I come from, like this little country town. And so this was in front of the whole class, which is like 20 people. And we're talking about like what schools we went to, and who we knew, who our family was. And I mentioned my high school, and he was like, oh, you went to that high school? And I was like, yeah, it was awesome. And he was like, oh, but that's in Vegemite Village. And so this was in front of the whole class, incredibly uncomfortable. And so I just kind of didn't continue with the conversation, didn't let him know that I actually lived in Vegemite Village for 18 years of my life and loved every moment of it and wouldn't have traded it for the world. But it was just such a clear like distinction in perceptions, and also the fact that he felt comfortable saying that in an environment where it was not appropriate at all, but he still felt comfortable saying it. What that lecturer didn't really understand or hasn't been exposed to is that culture that we were not taught but kind of brought up with anyway. So like, you know, we didn't sit there in lessons and it's like, you know, you have to sit up straight and wear white socks and put your hand up, like that. It wasn't taught like that, but we still knew things. So for example, my family, we knew what a Noongar was. Now, I didn't actually know that Noongar was Aboriginal, that it was an Aboriginal word until about 2 years ago. So Noongar means, like, if you're being a Noongar, you're like being a galah, you're like being really silly. So, you know, we didn't sit down and it was like, this is your language lesson for today, but we still knew those things and we still had that culture. We knew that if something went wrong, that was uwa, like another Aboriginal word. It's like mistake. Once again, I didn't know uwa was an Aboriginal word until about 5 years ago, when an incredibly well-respected Indigenous linguist come up to me and he was like, did you just say uwa? I was like, yeah, what of it? He was like, oh, that's Aboriginal. Like, no, it's not, it's just a word. I was like, no, it's Aboriginal. Like, okay, that's cool. I know things. So that's really, like, I don't know, makes me feel special as an Aboriginal person, I guess, that like, I can still have those things, and even though I don't know that it's Aboriginal, that there are probably other things that are inbuilt in me that are linked to my culture. So we'll go to the next picture. This is just, I don't know, I probably should have went to it ages ago, but just a bunch of language groups, over 250, that some of them are going incredibly strong. Like Pinajara kind of like South Australia, Northern Territory, incredible language group. I respect every language group, of course, but their link to culture and how just strongly they hold on to it really inspires me. And And so I'm from there, that's Kamilaroi. Really strong, common for Kamilaroi people, really strong ties with Wiradjuri, just a really big language group. But yeah, just wanted to share that in case it was kind of new to people. So 250 language groups. That's 250 languages spoken in this country. So I guess for obvious reasons, culture wasn't taught as strongly in my family as it may be taught in Pinanjara, for example. I don't need to get into that, but we still had these things. Like, there's still things that we can hold on to, and I find that really empowering as an Indigenous person. So when I discovered that, so this was actually like very much into my degree. I was probably about a year from finishing my degree, from both my degrees, and I discovered that there was this field called Indigenous astronomy. So I wanted to do astronomy. That was kind of like the long-term goal for me. So when I discovered this, like it literally changed my world. The fact that like people were interested in it and respected it, really like just bedazzled me. And I pretty much surrounded my life with Indigenous astronomy. So yeah, as I said, it's still kind of like it always has been, and kind of currently is still my dream to be an astronomer, or at the moment astrophysicist, which are very similar. But like I want to be a good one. Like, I don't want to be like just kind of like an average one. So I don't know, in my mind it makes sense to me that I want to learn it from every aspect and not just one way, like one super direct way to do it. There are lots of ways to do it. One way is what I'm currently doing at uni. That's one way. I use a lot of computers, I do a lot of programming, look at a lot of data from really big telescopes. But there are also lots of other ways to do it. Indigenous astronomy is another way. And it's really helped me. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So how I first got into Indigenous astronomy was I met this person called Dwayne Hummicker, who is ridiculously published in this field. He has really done amazing things for Indigenous astronomy. Sorry. He has a physics background. He did his master's in physics, in astrophysics, and moved over to Australia. So he's actually from the States. Moved over to Australia and did his PhD in Indigenous astronomy. And that was 10 years ago, I think. And since then, he's just taken it everywhere, and really like spread the good word about it. It's like religion. Like, have you heard about Indigenous astronomy? So he's kind of like that, like really religious person with Indigenous astronomy. So if we could look at the next picture, please. Thank you. It's a little bit slow. I should have got to this picture ages ago, but could we go to the next picture? Sorry. That was just kind of like atmosphere building background picture. So this is a picture, so I think a year ago it was now, at the space, what was it called? Australian Space Research Conference, I think it's called. And so this was at RMIT, lots of space stuff, space talks. Like, as a physicist and a wannabe astronomer, I found it incredibly, like, it's a bit boring. But it was an honour to go there. Like the fact that what I had to say, people were kind of interested in it, that was amazing. Like I was so excited. So I spoke at this conference and I spoke about some research me and Dwayne are doing in traditional methods of weather prediction. So in particular, I look at how traditional Indigenous people, but also it's still used today, methods of interpreting halos around a moon. So this isn't something that we see heaps in Australia, especially not in Brisbane because it's really hot. But a little bit more south, and it's a little bit more colder, and north when it gets cold, these halos form around the moon, and they also form around the sun. And I think what people know more commonly is sundogs. So they're like these fake suns next to the real sun, and it's this optical phenomena. And so Indigenous people picked up on this and they saw a correlation between these halos appearing around the moon and then storms. And so it's quite intricate, the different methods they use. So like if a halo appeared, they would then count how many stars were between the moon and the halo. And so that would tell them how far away the storm was. And so what I do is I correlate that to how that makes sense in physics world. So, and a lot of it really does. I haven't yet found something that doesn't make sense in physics world. For that particular example, it's to do with the clarity in the atmosphere. So it's formed by ice crystals. So like if there's lots of ice crystals in the atmosphere, you're not going to see many stars. The storm is pretty much right there. It's going to happen today or something. So I correlate these things to how it kind of makes sense in the physical system of things. So I spoke about that. I don't know, I had maybe 60, maybe that's too much, maybe about 40 people attended. I was being generous to myself, but I think about 40 people attended, and it was really cool. When I was there, I met Uncle Reg, so this man here. And so Uncle Reg showed us around some property that he works on. It's called Werta Yuang, and this site is being dubbed the Australian Stonehenge. And so this site has been, not this site exactly, but a site like a little bit over, has been dated to between 10 and 14,000 years old. And so it essentially does the same thing that the Stonehenge does. It represents the solstices and equinoxes, so kind of like where the sun rises and sets, kind of big in astronomy world. It's important for some reason, and it's really old. It's older than the Stonehenge, and it's a beautiful site. It's huge. It's massive. You can Google it, but it really doesn't do it justice. It's like, I don't know, really big anyway. And and it's incredible. You're like walking around this huge circle with all these intricate paths, and just knowing that they they match up to not obvious things, because these things change. So we had the equinox 2 days ago, I think it was, and so these are not obvious things that, I certainly don't pick up on it, and I'm doing astronomy. This is something that they've built on, this knowledge has built on for so many years, and just having that in a tangible form was really cool. So that was Uncle Rob. He showed us that. That was a really special time for me, I guess. So after that, I kind of thought about what I was doing with my life. And I had just spent thousands of dollars at uni, because uni's not cheap, and I was being taught the same things through my culture and meeting people like Uncle Reg, And so it was just a really weird comparison, being told this is success, like you going to uni and doing this, you are so successful, like this is amazing. And comparing that to like sitting in a class and already knowing what they're talking about because I learn it from Uncle Reg and other elders. So yeah, it really made me like put it in perspective how science and these really technical fields are so highly respected and regarded, and how little we actually know or endeavour to know about Indigenous astronomy. So yeah, I did a lot of reading, I guess, into like different knowledge systems. So it hadn't really occurred to me that there were these contrasting knowledge systems, and that they are conflicting and they are contradictory. And I think religion is a really good example here. So, science says one thing, religion says another. And we're always told that you can't be both. If you want to be a Christian, you can't be a biologist, because they're so contradictory, stuff like that. I feel like it's very similar with astronomy and Indigenous astronomy. Like, people kind of see them as two separate things and they're not the same, and they don't, Indigenous astronomy doesn't complement this Western physics that we have, so why would you bother doing it? There's just no point to it. That's the impression that that's the impression that I had as well. This wasn't something that was just being put on me. This is something that had been built into me as well. And so I started thinking a lot about that, and just a lot of reading in that by some amazing academics in this field. So one example, Professor Martin Nakada, he's currently at JCU, incredibly intelligent person who taught me and whoever has read his articles that you can have different knowledge systems and they can sit side by side, and that's okay. They can be contradictory, and that's fine, because they're different. They're different approaches, and that's okay. That's good. That's actually a really good thing. So I want to tell a story, a dreaming, and it originates from South Australia, and the country is called Mingari. This is probably close to my favourite story. I love it. So in old times, Mingari women kind of hated men. They were like not really into men, didn't want to have kids, like just maybe they didn't hate men, but they just didn't want to have kids. Maybe they hated kids. And so so they're like going around like all single and stuff. And there's this guy, he's a hunter, and he's like the best hunter anyone's ever seen. So Niruna, he's the hunter, he's like, well, I can hunt anything and I am successful. I can do this. I can hunt absolutely anything that I want. And so he decided he wanted to hunt the Mingari ladies because they were so unattainable. He thought he could do it. He's the best hunter. They're mine. I'm going to take them. And so he starts chasing a group of sisters, a group of Mingari sisters. And they're running, being chased by this hunter. And they're running, and then they're running so much they run up into the sky. And so they're up in the sky, still running from each other. And Niruna, the hunter, he gets really mad. He's like, this is annoying. Like, I'm sick of this. And so he starts getting aggressive. And the older sister comes out, and she's got dingoes. So she's got these dingoes protecting her and her sisters. And she's like, go eat him. And so, Niruna and these dingoes are fighting. And Niruna gets really mad, and he's like, I'm just going to shoot you. So he shoots at the older sister. He's got fire magic. So he shoots at the older sister with his fire magic. And she also has fire magic. So she shoots back. and they extinguish. They cancel each other out. And the older sister, she's mad because he shot, and then so she shoots him, and then he has to shoot back to protect himself, and so cancels out. And so these relate to stars. So the five sisters, the dingoes, the hunter, they all have like, so it's like this is the hunter, this is the sisters, these are the dingoes. They all correlate to specific stars in our sky. And so if we could look at the next picture, please. Thank you. So these are the stars that they refer to when they talk about these people. So we have Naruna, he's a scary hunter dude, our dingoes. So this is the older sister. So she's the one protecting them. And then we have the sisters over here, the Pleiades. So what's really interesting about this is Aldebaran, that's her fire magic. That's the older sister's fire magic. And over here, Betelgeuse is Naruna's fire magic. So what's really cool about this is these two stars are special stars. So we call them variable stars in physics world. And variable stars, what they do is they vary in brightness and luminosity over time. So, for example, Betelgeuse varies on a 7-year period. So over 7 years, it'll go from really bright to really dim. You can't see it at all. So you can kind of start to see how, okay, fire magic being extinguished, this is kind of relating to stuff that's happening. It doesn't seem as, I don't know, fanciful and like mythical as it kind of did 5 minutes ago. Aldebaran, which is the older sister's fire magic, also is a variable star. However, in like physics world, they say that we don't actually know its period, and you can't actually detect its variability with the naked eye. So there's two situations here. There's like Western science contradicting Indigenous knowledge, and Indigenous knowledge contradicting Western science. So Western science is saying, well, they're not fire magic, they're stars. And then we have Indigenous knowledge saying, well, we can detect these things with our naked eye. Like, why are you saying we can't? So we've got these two systems that are contradicting each other, but also really complementing each other. Like they're essentially saying the same thing. So I was actually sitting in a class last week. I'm doing a stars course, learning all about stars, and we're learning about variable stars. I'm sitting there like, I know all this. I was taught this. Like, this is not new knowledge to me. This is not like, and this is master's level. This is a master's level course that I'm being taught the same stuff that this dreaming has taught me. So once again, it was like kind of like this weird moment where these two worlds are colliding, and they're not opposing each other. They're actually feeding into each other really well. So yeah, little example, I guess. And yeah, so Orion is the big hunter, probably like one of the most well-known constellations, very easy to see with the naked eye. And it's really easy to see because of these three stars here, Orion's belt. Like if you just look into the sky and try and find three stars next to each other, you'll see it. It's really bright, it's really pretty. And the sisters are Pleiades, beautiful, beautiful constellation. So yeah, not as easy to see with the naked eye, but still really pretty. Look up Google images. Yes, so I just wanted to show you a picture of a variable star because it was really pretty as well. Could we look at that, please? So you've probably seen this. This is like really close up variable star. No? It's just me that sits on Google Images. So this is an example of a variable star, really close up, really good telescope. And I just thought it was beautiful. These are actually really useful. So variable stars were kind of acknowledged in physics world not that long ago, about 200 years ago, and because, you know, they vary in brightness. And what it actually led to is this guy, Hubble. So there's the Hubble telescope you might have heard of. So that Hubble was actually an astronomer, and he was thinking about these variable stars, and there was this, has anybody seen Hidden Figures? Yeah, a few of you. So we kind of know now that there were these amazing African American ladies that were like our first programmers and like these amazing mathematicians. So this African American lady, this isn't in the movie. No spoilers. So Henrietta, I can't remember her last name, which is terrible, discovered that there was a relationship between the luminosity, so like the brightness of the star, and like its time, its period. So Hubble used that information and was able to determine that there are in fact other galaxies. So at this time, we didn't know if we were the only thing that existed. So we kind of knew that the Milky Way existed, but we were like, is that really a bright star in our space, in our galaxy, or is it somewhere else? So we actually used a special type of these variable stars and discovered that that bright star is actually a whole galaxy, and that's outside of our galaxy. So this was huge. Like, this is like the Earth is not flat kind of discovery. So yeah, just a little bit of side history, science history, I guess. Okay, so I guess kind of at this point, I really like thinking about it this way because it helps me, and I'm like a very visual analogy kind of person, metaphor type of person. So if we think of a river, so we've got a river, and then that river goes places, obviously. And so it comes from the mountains, goes across the land, and it kind of has an end. Not all rivers, but rivers can have an end where it kind of meets the ocean. So you've got the river, you've got the ocean, there's this space. So these are called estuaries. Probably heard of it. I actually hadn't heard of it. I don't know if that's weird or not, but I hadn't heard of it until I started looking into this like two knowledge systems kind of stuff. This is actually not my analogy or metaphor. This is something that I've kind of taken from someone else. Like an Indigenous knowledge metaphor, I guess. And so the saltiness of the sea and the fresh water of the river create completely different environments. Environments you don't see in the river and environments you don't see in the ocean. And so lots of things happen in these estuaries, like lots of salmon and tuna are created and live in these spaces. Like, it's a really abundant space. And I like to think of Western knowledge and Indigenous knowledge combining as like it has similar potential. If we can combine these two things, like just smash them together, we could maybe find new things. I believe in that. I very firmly believe in that. And it's just kind of one way I like to think about it. I have a cool picture of it, actually. Can we look at that? So you can literally see like that weird space where it's like we've got this river coming into this giant ocean. What's happening? Everything's weird. Weird stuff happens, which is good. It's good in science. Like, weird stuff is the best. Yeah. So in that class I was sitting in last week, and this is honestly last week I was sitting in, this actually happened. I'm not lying about this at all. It was even like 7 days ago. It was last Thursday. Sitting in this class doing learning about variable stars, and like, it made me really proud to be Kamilaroi and to have this knowledge that I'm learning at this, incredibly prestigious uni and incredibly prestigious degree and all that stuff. It's like, that's amazing, like, well done. Not to me, to them, like, well done for that knowledge and thank you. So I was incredibly proud to be Aboriginal, but I wasn't proud to be a scientist. I wasn't proud to be an astronomer or astrophysicist. And I am at times, but I find it a lot harder. So, I want to explain that with another story, I guess, about the moon. So the moon's kind of relevant to what I do, and I learn a lot about the moon in Indigenous astronomy. So there's lots of different dreamings about the moon. Obviously, it's this really obvious object in the sky. There's going to be lots of stuff about it, lots of information about it. So where I'm from, Kamilaroi, the moon's called Gile. And so Gile, and this is actually really common across a lot of language groups. Gile is kind of like this really cheeky bugger, like, you can't be trusted. It's like a little bit sneaky. Don't really know, he's just this scary, weird dude. And he's a male. And so Gile in Kamilaroi, he does a few things. He actually controls fertility. So women are told, don't look at the moon, he'll take it away, because he's just this nasty person. But he likes creating babies at the same time. So there's this weird, don't look at him, but he's giving you kids. It was weird. He can also send children mad. That's particular to Kamilaroi land. So kids can't look at the moon, women can't look at the moon. Yeah. So Uluru, so this is northeast Arnhem Land, incredible country, amazing place. So they say that the moon fills up with the ocean as it crosses the horizon. And that as it rises, it also fills up with the ocean. And so this is a discovery, they've connected tides with the moon, which is of course what we know to be the case. The moon controls the tides. Well, we have tides because of the moon. So maybe we should go to the next picture, thank you. This kind of explains it better than I can. So we have this thing called gravity. It's awesome but weird. We have the moon over here, which, because it has mass, it has gravity. The sun over here, again, much bigger. I don't think this is to scale, to be fair. I think we're much smaller than that compared to the sun. I should have thought about that before I used this picture. But anyway, so we have these two things pulling, basically pulling the Earth. And the moon's very small compared to the Earth. So the gravity is not that much. It pulls Earth a little bit, but not really that much. But we can see this from the effect on the water, because it pulls the water. And kind of has to do with the center of mass, in the middle, and makes it into a football when it's in this really nice alignment anyway. And so this results in our tides, low tide, high tide. So, you know, if the moon's down here, we actually get high tide down here, high tide up there, and then low tides on the side. So the position of the sun doesn't really matter with respect to tides. It's about the moon. The moon's controlling the tides. And so this was first discovered in the 1500s by Galileo. Which is not the case. Like, our books say that. I learnt that it was discovered by Galileo, but that's not really the whole truth. If anything, the Uluru people of northeast Ireland discovered it before Galileo, and like other First Nations people probably discovered it before Galileo. But that's not what I'm taught. You know, I pay so much money to go to these places and I'm not taught that. So for me, that makes it really hard to do that, like to be a part of this system. And yeah, I guess that's why I'm not always proud to be a scientist. But, you know, I still really like it. It's not to say that I don't really like physics. I love physics. I love astronomy. I still want to do it, but it's not perfect. And that's my experience of it. So, I guess another thing that I guess I'd like to highlight is the, so I'm talking about academia. And so academia is this really weird world that has its own culture and its own traditions. It's been around for a long time. And it, like, you know, people love traditions. Traditions are great. They are fantastic things. But they have this one tradition, well, they have a few, but this one tradition in particular that I'm going to mention today that really annoys me. And it's like, so they're happy to, I guess, engage with elders who have this vast knowledge that's been built on for thousands and thousands of years. And someone with a degree can take that and then write it and then get put in a journal and then there's their name on it. That's great. That's how the system kind of works. But there's no recognition there. The elder is not an author, even though it's their knowledge, because they haven't paid $50,000 to get a degree, to get that certificate. They're not an author. They're not in a journal. They're not acknowledged for their knowledge. And I just don't get that. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Just one kind of beef I have. Yeah. But I don't know, I think there's hope. I definitely think there's hope. There's, like, you know, we can change things. We made it, so we can change it. So I want to kind of wrap up a little bit with another story, and this is my favourite story. I love this. And probably because I was told it personally, which is rare. You know, it's really difficult for me, and it's not for everybody, but for me it's difficult for me to connect to culture because my family don't have those links. Like, those links are very severed and very lost. So to be told a dreaming personally, like in real life, is like, I love it. It's awesome. I was also near a fire when it happened, which makes it a little bit more like atmospheric and cool. So it was told to me by a dhagun young man. So that's like kind of, I think it's actually west of Newcastle, kind of near around Newcastle anyway. And so we're sitting around a fire, and he said that there are these spiders, and they come out of everything. And they come out of the stars. So the stars make these spiders, and they make these golden webs, and these golden webs go everywhere. They touch everything. So, and all these webs are connected with each other. So it's like everything is connected to everything from these spider webs. And so when I was told that story, like the first thing I thought of was entanglement, quantum entanglement. Super weird stuff where like if you have an electron in a lab in London and then you have an electron like in another galaxy and you do something to this electron, it does it to that electron in another galaxy. Like it's this really weird thing. That's true. It actually happens, isn't it? So quantum entanglement, if you're interested in that. So it made me think of that. This whole, like there has to be a connection there. Like for that to be affected, or that to be affected by that, there has to be something connecting that. And then, you know, once you read into that type of stuff, you get into like things like string theory, which is this horrible thing I'm not going to try and explain. It's disastrous. I think the people that know, like have a solid understanding of it can't even explain it. It's just this really horrible thing, but little strings anyway. And this is the mechanism for quantum entanglement. And so, I don't know, that really kind of just really affected me and resonated with me and kind of how I live my life. And so I want to show you a picture of, so this is me and an amazing girl called Manema. She's a Torres Strait Islander person from Tiwi Island. And so I'm actually trying to paint that dreaming. Yeah. And Manema's doing her own thing. And Manema told me, and a bunch of other people, well, not a bunch of other people, like some other people that we were with, we're at a camp. It wasn't like this weird thing. So we're at a camp and she's in year 12 at the moment. And she said to us that she wants to be the first Indigenous Prime Minister. And that was like, that's amazing. Please, like, please live that and keep that as your goal. Like, don't let go of that. So yeah, she's my hope. People like that are my hope. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.